aspects to the study area that we want to talk about. So to the extent that we can, we'll keep questions to the end. Generally, I'd like to see this go kind of the way the first meeting went, which is we'll go through our recommendations, and then we'll just open it up at the end. And we can answer any questions you have. We can come back to whatever slides we may need to, things like that.
And these are all draft recommendations, so works in progress, and we're really here to present them and try to get feedback and see, comments, see if they're heading in the right direction or not, and then we can go back and revise things again and move the project one step further.
So just a quick look at kind of how things are going to go tonight. We'll talk about introductions, obviously. We'll look back at the background and purpose of the study. We've already had one public meeting, so we'll talk a little bit about results of that. Obviously, we'll explain the study area. We'll spend a little bit of time. It's a fairly large study area. Show a map of that. We'll talk about the specific sort of sub-locations that we're going to look at. Touch on the safety audit summary. So early on in the project, we walked the study area with Martin, Galen, and others, and just sort of listened and identified specific safety concerns within the study area. We'll talk about some of those because some of those, really the majority of those, are what drove in part the recommendations that we're making. So combination of the results of the safety audit and the results of the first public meeting are really what sort of drove the recommendations that we're going to look at tonight. Obviously, we'll talk about the draft recommendations. We'll let people know what the schedule is. I'd say in general we're on schedule. And then we're just going to open it up. So the background of this project, the thing I would emphasize about the background of this project is this is not a typical Maine DOT project. So this is not a bridge or highway program construction project. It's in the work plan where they hire designers, they design a project, they advertise it, and they construct it. Similar to anywhere that you've been up here all summer. This is a planning study. So this is an effort between the city and DOT to identify potential improvements within the study area that they can then attempt to leverage grant funding for. It's a big difference between sort of a standard Maine DOT construction project and really the point of this work, which is the planning study. So the study advisory committee, I won't read this all together here, but it's Martin and Galen from the city of Presque Isle, Jay Cam from North Maine Development, Jared Gillette and Martin Rooney from Maine DOT. Unfortunately, none of them were able to make it tonight. And the consultant team is myself, Chris Hellstrom, Tom Erico, Mitch Razor, and Sean Davis, who works in our Falmouth office, which was involved as well.
So we have transportation engineers, we have planners, we have landscape architects, urban designers, trying to look at everything holistically, make sure the city functions, but also can become more of a place that people want to do business and hang out and visit. So trying to bring a lot of different expertise to the table during the process.
Right. So just to expand on that a little bit, the way the study advisory committee is put together is you got local representatives from the city, Northern Maine Development. You got Maine DOT, and then you have the consultant team. I have a background in geotechnical engineering and highway design. Tom's a senior transportation planner. Mitch is a landscape architect, and Sean's an engineer. Sean and I both worked for Maine DOT for over a decade, so that's sort of what our background is. So the study purpose and need, I won't read this out loud, but in general, the purpose of the study is to identify transportation improvements that are going to foster economic development, increase accessibility for all modes, and really develop sort of village character. Leave this up for a second just to give people a chance to digest that. But what you'll see as we get into the recommendations is that the recommendations are geared towards really engaging all modes and really promoting that sort of village feel within the downtown. So this is a study area. Again, it's quite large. I think most of us are either from Presque Isle or local to the area. So rather than tell you where this is, we know where it is. What's important is sort of the sub-areas that we're going to talk about, because that's how the recommendations are broken down. So I know this pointer's somewhat small. We're actually right here. So we're going to refer to basically Umpy to Chapman Street. We're going to call that Main Street South. And then from Chapman Street up to Park and Allen, we're gonna call that the downtown. And then from there up to the mall, we're gonna call that Main Street North. And then there's some other specific areas that are already pretty aptly named, such as the Five Fingers intersection and Riverside Drive, the park, etc. So we're gonna kind of look at this from south to north, and then we'll branch off to the west. So before we actually get into the recommendations, again, the safety audit had a big influence on what the recommendations are. Again, there's a lot of information here, I'm not gonna read all of it, but just to touch on some key ones. Second bullet, speed of cars coming down the hill from Humpy. So that came up at the first public meeting. We come down the hill, all of a sudden it feels like it widens out into 4 lanes, and the natural tendency is, in general, traffic speeds up. That came up. I'd say another one is Riverside being used as a bypass. That's a key one, because you can't take a left at State and Maine. So left turn prohibitions in general, that came up. How does that influence movements in general? So we got some recommendations on that. ADA compliance, that's a requirement. That came up, and there's definitely a need for that. Bike ped accessibility, the bike path. Bike path should be a loop. That was a resounding sentiment from the first public meeting. We got some recommendations on that. We did look at the Five Fingers intersection. We kept the name for you, Martin, so it's already been named. I mean, we can't change it, that's what people call it. And another key thing that came out of the safety audit was connecting western neighborhoods. So connecting western neighborhoods to what we've already sort of called Main Street North, which we also hear is called the retail area. You know, what can we do to increase the ability for people to reach those areas on bike, on foot, versus only by car? So starting south to north, so we'll start talking about recommendations. So Main Street South, this is the beginning of the study area. You know, we're sitting just on the picture over here. We're facing north. This segment from Humpy to Maple Street is currently other than this area I'm just crossing right here, it's a 3-lane section. So there's 1 lane northbound into town, 2 lanes coming up the hill. So if we look at sort of a rendering of the existing conditions, 3-lane section, we've got a sidewalk on the west side. The fair amount of width here, 12-foot lanes, 5-foot shoulder on the east side. The question becomes, based on the safety audit, based on input from the first public meeting, how do we repurpose this width? So this is a proposed, we'll call it a proposed repurposing of the width. And Mitch, do you want to talk about this schematic here?
First, we did study the hill coming out of town in terms of going, so there's not a passing lane for the truck. And the feasibility of that shows that you could go to a 2-lane section here, and because of way trucks are modern trucks, modern engines, that'll work.
Particularly because it's a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone, right? So you want people, I mean, the speed limit is low, and so that allows for, you know, reasonable mobility up the hill.
And in terms of like working with an asset, coming in, this is like, you know, the campus is an incredible asset here. How can you sort of take that? And so part of the idea is that you can expand that a little bit into the right of way with a greenway, make that campus front lawn a little bit bigger, create a little nicer, slower gateway coming into the community, still have high functionality, but really start to create that's a highly like visible and sort of legible path from the campus to the downtown. There's currently one that sort of winds in the back that's really great, but in the evenings or if you're walking along as a student, that may not feel so comfortable. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to really start to make a stronger connection with the campus to the downtown. The downtown's like one of your great assets. The campus is a great asset. They're just not really connected. Is there a way that you can work with the existing right-of-way to strengthen that connection? So the idea here is really to calm traffic, create a attractive gateway, and sort of basically extend the downtown and the campus towards each other and help them meet. and hopefully leverage those two assets, you know, using sort of, like we said, using transportation system to sort of, to play to your strengths. So we think this is really could work and really sort of set the tone coming into the community, coming down the hill. And be a, you know, really sort of good placemaking meets transportation solution.
So I'll toggle back and forth just one more time, just point out a couple more things. So again, the existing width that we have available to us, 12-foot lanes, there's 2 lanes going up the hill. Just to expand a little bit on what Mitch said, to some extent, the 2 lanes southbound is a continuation of the typical section of Main Street as it exists now. From the perspective of trucks climbing the hill, that first section really doesn't warrant like what we would call a truck climbing lane per se. You know, there's short grade uphill, and then there's actually a flat and even a downhill section leading up to the crosswalk just outside here. So again, repurposing that width, introducing green space, and really connecting the campus to the downtown. So what led us to that recommendation? You know, what are the pros and cons? Again, I won't read everything here, but Mitch mentioned traffic calming. What does that mean? The whole thing starts to feel narrower. You know, it's, to me, the way I think about that is I'm going down the interstate and I get to a bridge replacement, and all of a sudden there's Jersey barriers and I've only got 11 feet. And I've been doing 70 with 12 or 13 feet to work with. I'm gonna slow down because it feels smaller. So to some extent, the narrowing of the available typical section to cars provides that traffic calming effect, slower speeds, safer. Mitch mentioned the gateway to the city. I mean, really just leveraging that existing asset of the bike path crossing at the beginning of the study area. That I think is a definite advantage to the proposed typical section here. Cons, slowing, you know, there's 1 lane going up the hill. That's kind of obvious. There's 1 lane going up the hill. But as Tom said, the speed limit's 25 there anyway. And to be honest, if you've ever stood on the sidewalk out here or walked this piece of Route 1, everyone's doing at least 25. There really isn't an issue, I would say, maintaining the posted speed limit in this area. From a bike ped perspective, you know, what are the pros and cons of this alternative? Well, again, it's a protected facility, so now it's separated from the travelway by the green space, by the Esplanade, and again, it improves the existing crosswalk in University Street. That was something that came up at the first public meeting. I'm sure many of us have used that crossing. The extra width there could potentially offer us space for refuge at that crossing. There's a lot of different improvements that could come with this, but again, the gateway treatment being part of that village feel that we're going for. And just to show you what this would look like in plan view, so again, what we're looking at here, just to take a step back, we're looking at this proposed section. Now we're looking at it in a plan view. People that know me know I'm terribly colorblind, but I do know that that's purple. So purple is path. Think when you look at the rest of these plan sheets throughout the presentation, think purple is path. And the reason that we did that is to distinguish between traditional sidewalk, which you'll see in some of the other slides, and what we're calling this multi-use path or this greenway. So again, we're just out of the picture here, beginning of the study area at University Street, and now we head into town in this 2-lane typical section, again, repurposing that space for the path. And this is again coming down Main Street. Now we're to Maple Street. Now we're into the sort of the second half of what we would call Main Street South. So beginning at Maple Street, again, a lot of available width. Existing conditions, we have 4 lanes, sidewalk on both sides, a lot of available width to work with. And there were 2 concepts that we came up with here. Mitch, I'll let you talk about those. This is, again, repurposing of the existing width for all the things we talked about before, traffic calming, village character, all of those things. So this is concept 1.
Yeah, and sure, so the idea is to continue that greenway from the campus down to this area And it does widen up considerably there, and it has sort of that sort of what we call sort of a commercial strip feel. So it's very open. There's very little trees, and for pedestrians moving through there, it doesn't really feel very welcoming. And even for the businesses, it could use some sprucing up. So this is sort of like extending a front yard or a greenway in front of those businesses, giving them a more attractive feel. And then because we're really trying to sort of put the greenway on one side, on the western side, really try to give it something that has a visual presence. Instead of trying to like thin it out and do a little bit here, a little there, really give a presence to it so it makes that feel coming to town. You really have a sense that there's a lawn area, a green space, and trees that really changes the feel of it. Because sometimes if you just do like one tree here, one tree there, it can't quite stand up to the openness of it. And this, we think, might be bold enough to be legible, to actually have a feeling and to really change the feel of that area as you move into town and make it much more sort of attractive to people coming to visit here, and then strengthening that connection between the campus and the downtown, making people want to make that walk, making the neighborhoods, trying to cross over Route 1, make it easier to cross Route 1 to get down to the park, to make those connections, and to just spruce the area up. So it sort of tries to solve a bunch of issues at once. And
let me
yeah,
just say one thing, and I'll say that the key change from the standpoint of gaining some space to do what Mitch wants to do is eliminating a travel lane, right? It's a 4-lane section, currently 2 lanes in each direction. It goes to a 3-lane section with that center 2-way left turn lane. Quite frankly, that's a safer configuration. From a volume capacity perspective in terms of mobility, that 3-lane section can handle the amount of traffic that exists out there today, and we assume some sort of growth also as part of that.
Yeah.
So it really will function, in a safer way than the current 4-lane section. When you're driving, people making turns off that sort of center lane, it gets really difficult and unsafe.
And we heard from people, they say they get in their car right now and sometimes drive across Main Street. They don't feel comfortable even walking across. So if you make it down to 3 lanes, and occasionally you can have a pedestrian refuge potentially, we haven't gotten that far with the study, it really could make that feel much safer to cross for families, anybody just walking out for lunch, and maintain the functionality for all the existing businesses, future growth, have all that there. But really trying to sort of stitch together the eastern and western sides of the community. Right now sometimes people have said Main Street sort of feels like a divide rather than it's bringing people together. If there's any way to sort of use that as a hinge or a way to sort of unite the two sides of the community, that we're hoping these recommendations build on that desire.
So again, this is concept 1 from Maple Street to Chapman Street. The second concept uses the same idea that Tom mentioned. It's currently a 4-lane section. It goes through a 3-lane section by virtue of making a center shared left turn lane. The difference between concept 1 and concept 2 graphically is, as you can see, as I toggle back and forth, really we're sort of splitting the difference with that width that's gained by going to a 3-lane section with concept 2. So rather than have greenway, a continuation of the multi-use path that we mentioned in the section up here by the campus, concept 2 really adds green space on both sides.
And traditionally, we probably wouldn't do this approach and recommend it, but we think given the character of the area, it might be more, we're suggesting go the bolder route and try to create more of a presence of the greenway. So it doesn't, I don't use the word diluted, we want that improvement to be, recognizable and people can see that change and use it. We do think on the eastern side that there should be improvements. We should work with the property owners to improve lighting and some landscaping as possible. We don't think it should just be only on one side.
Agreed. So from a visualization perspective, again, we've seen this picture before, but I'll show it again and you'll see why. So this is facing north, 4-lane section, and then this is a rendering of, in that same picture, of what the 3-lane concept that we're calling concept 1. So an extension of the multi-use path on the west side of Main Street. This is a picture of what that would look like. So Mitch touched on a lot of these already, just to recap, you know, what led us to concept one as opposed to concept two as a recommendation here. 3-lane section safer, the narrowing of the overall typical section may permit an opportunity for median islands. Again, that's just something we're still looking at. It's, you know, the repurposing of that travel lane, you know, gives you space to do things on either side of the road. It's from a bike ped perspective, again, a protected facility, completely separated from the street, from a mainline travelway perspective for vehicles. And it adds that, as Mitch mentioned, it adds that sort of streetscape design, kind of a sprucing up, and really just gives some character to an otherwise, what's the word I should use there, Mitch?
Nondescript, I don't know. Nondescript.
Well, and calm traffic, right? I mean, if you looked at that photograph, you know, that Chris had of that shot, it just says, go fast, go fast. And so we think it'll have, you know, starting at the gateway treatment at the top of the hill, going all the way to downtown, really starting to slow people, changing sort of how people behave, you know, driving through the corridor.
So again, looking at what that would look like in plan view, this is an extension of the plan views we looked at before. Again, purple's the path. So now you can see on the west side of the road, we've got this additional green space. We've got the path in purple, and then you can see in plan view now we've transitioned to this 3-lane typical section with the shared left turn lane in the center. A couple of other things to note here. Proposed crosswalks are in red. That crosswalk right there, that's the existing location. We're considering some different layout of proposed crosswalks in this area, potentially at side streets, including Maple and Cedar. But Mitch had mentioned, there was a person at the first public meeting that I believe works in the Big Cheese Plaza somewhere. Was it you, man?
Agency on Aging.
Yeah. Oh, right.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it was, I think
She drove across the street.
I think you did mention that you don't use that crosswalk because it's not safe and you drive to certain GA.
I did.
So, thank you for coming. So that clearly the narrower section, as you can see in plan view, the narrower section, it's less distance to cross to get out of the street. So
And we talked about the median islands, right, having this, I mean, that's the safest possible scenario for someone trying to cross that street where you have a refuge in the middle, it's raised, it's protected. Whether we can do those or not, uncertain because of movements at driveways, right? We've got to maintain access into properties and make sure business can function okay. But boy, if we can find some locations for some crosswalk, because we do want to add more crosswalks in this section. I mean, there's a neighborhood, we want to give them access to that path, that greenway, so that they can get to wherever they want to go. So we do think more crosswalks in this stretch make sense. Where and how that plays out, that's, you know, another project down the road, but we do think it makes sense to do some of those.
So continuing on northbound, as we work towards Chapman Street, again, you can see the path in purple on the west side of the street, and you can see sidewalk on the east side of the street. The other thing I would note that's shown in all of the plan views that we'll look at tonight, there are improvements to access management shown throughout the study area. So you'll see on both sides of the street, you'll see openings, you'll see curb cuts, you'll see proposed gaps in sidewalk. I emphasize that this is very conceptual. This is, I wouldn't use the word draft, but I would say that these recommendations are at a conceptual level at this point. So improvements to access management, Tom just touched on it. The idea there is to thread the needle between increased safety and the ability for all these businesses to still function properly. So Chapman Street is sort of the end of what we're calling Main Street South and the beginning of what we're calling the downtown section. So this is looking downtown. We're going to talk about Chapman Street to Blake Street, which is sort of that core downtown section. This is the existing condition. Again, a lot of width. It's like 59, 60 feet curb to curb here. 4 lanes, on-street parking on both sides, sidewalk on both sides. So again, how can this existing width be repurposed to align with some of the things that have been identified from a safety perspective and from the first public meeting. So two concepts here, we're calling them short-term and long-term. Mitch,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
so the difference here is really, are we moving curb? The short-term concept, if I toggle back here, the short-term concept is a reconfiguration of the total existing width curb to curb without moving the curb.
Should be. Yeah, good.
So what do you do? What do you do with that space in the middle? Potentially, as Mitch and excuse me, as Tom mentioned, potentially raise refuge. And of course, in order for this whole thing to function, it becomes that center shared left turn lane where there isn't a pedestrian crossing. This is considered short term because this is relatively easy to sort of implement in the short term.
This is restriping, really, right?
This wouldn't require much more than a restriping exercise. The long-term concept, you'll notice when I toggle, now we're talking about truly narrowing the template here. Curbs are coming in. What is this accomplishing? Well, in general, it accomplishes the same thing. It's still a 3-lane typical section. You got potential for refuge in the middle. It's a shared left turn lane. Sidewalks get bigger. On-street parking gets normalized. So now it's a consistent width, and in terms of the village character feel, that wider sidewalk piece is pretty important. Mitch, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the downtown has a history of trees, and they just need more opportunity to thrive. The more space you can give the trees, the better. The sidewalks seem pretty ample, especially, I guess, on the west side. We've noticed a lot of ADA issues throughout it, but on the right side or east side, we got a little tight. So we think any space is going to help there to allow for new street lights. You have a new allow for more robust trees and the opportunity to actually grow and fortunately, all the area, it does have underground utilities. You have the huge benefit already. So you could start to introduce trees and I think they'll have a better chance to survive just given a few more feet of room to grow, a little bit more length. So and then overall just narrowing that street from curb to curb is going to make it feel like some of the historic photos people showed us. They showed us what this is sort of what it used to look like here. And you can actually sort of bring it back to that and have functionality, right? With the growth.
No, exactly. So one thing, I'm sure what people are thinking about, can we make that section work, right? 4 lanes of traffic going through the signals at Chapman, Academy, State. So we did a few things. One is we counted traffic. We wanted to understand how many cars are turning left, going through, turning right at an intersection. That really tells a lot about how things will potentially perform. And so we plug those volumes into a model. We create this simulation model that simulates traffic at those intersections with the change. And then we also grew that traffic. So we did existing baseline 2023 traffic counts, and then we grew the traffic, assuming a 10% growth, and it performed fine. That the intersections worked okay with that section. And you don't have to prohibit movements. You can actually allow turn movements at State Street where they're prohibited now. So you provide better accessibility within the downtown. It's not confusing. Where do I turn? How do I get to some of the the back streets? So that's really a bonus. So it can work from a modeling perspective, and it provides better sort of I'll say wayfinding and circulation in the town. The other thing I'll just note from a safety perspective, if you're here at the first meeting, the crash pattern in this stretch, it's a high crash location. What's the pattern? Hitting parked cars. And so what do our plans show, whether short-term or long-term? Wider parking lanes so that people aren't running into some of the parked cars. So really it's addressing mobility. We can make it work okay from a vehicle perspective. It's safer from the standpoint of parked cars and then pedestrian-wise. Think about just being able to cross 3 lanes of traffic versus 4 that's out there.
So the long-term concept would be the recommendation, and again, just summarizing, pros and cons from a roadway typical section and bike ped perspective, what led us to this recommendation. Tom just touched on it, normalization of the on-street parking. It's a high crash location. One of the first things that came up on the safety walk, mirrors getting ripped off at Dwight's Barbershop. That's a plug for Dwight's Barbershop, Dwight's management. So, get your haircut at Dwight's Barbershop. I don't. Just because I don't cut it at all. Normalization of the parking, just again, it's just a safety aspect of the new typical section. The narrower template, promotes traffic calming, improves safety. We touched on this before when we were talking about up here. So now it's just one lane north, one lane south. So slow vehicles, passing of slow vehicles limited, yes, but the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. And overall, what we're trying to do is have people drive 25 miles per hour from a safety perspective.
And we also just feel this feels more like a main street. When we know it's Route 1, it's arterial. 4 lanes is daunting to sort of walk across, look at, and we're hoping going to 3 lanes, the downtown will be more user friendly for everybody, and just feel more comfortably used and move through.
The other thing is we talk about potential for, there are those 2 crosswalks between State and Academy. We'd love to be able to provide median islands there so that you can cross. Just not sure they'll be able to work given the queue to turn left on the State or the queue to turn left on Academy. They get close to those crosswalks, so don't know. I mean, that's going to have to be sort of a design decision down the road if this moves forward. But maybe we'd love to have them, but I'm not sure if they're going to be able to.
Maybe one squeezes in front of the theater potentially, but it's tight. It's tight.
Hey Chris, I'll interject one question.
Sure.
In your traffic study, did you incorporate emergency vehicle transportation?
Excuse me?
In your traffic study, did it include consideration for emergency vehicles?
Emergency vehicles like coming
How
through.
they might proceed?
When we model all the vehicles that we count at a location, so it includes trucks and buses and vehicles. In terms of emergency response, we don't like plug that into a model. We recognize that that's something that needs to occur. We generally engage fire department, emergency, emergency ambulance departments as part of looking at a plan. That could be an element related to those islands actually, in terms of being able to maneuver through that corridor, that those islands would potentially prevent them from circulating through if they're trying to get through. Could be why you don't do them. Another reason why we've seen communities not do some islands in that case, so they can get through a section of roadway.
The turn lane, they may need that dedicated for emergency access. And, so we've recommended in the past in a lot of communities, and we can't do them because of the input we get from fire and rescue.
We'll chat about it later, so I didn't interrupt, but I just
No.
before I forgot, the study included that, the solid number.
Yeah.
That's a great question, thank you. Again, looking at the recommended alternative in Plan B, so in this picture, we're going to start on the right-hand side. We're starting at Chapman Street, moving north towards Blake Street. Again, notice the difference in color between what we're calling path and what we're calling sidewalk. Path is purple, sidewalk is, help me out, Mitch.
Gray.
Gray.
Great.
Again,
I would say, I just want to bring up one thing on this, Chris.
Yes.
One of the suggested, again, these are draft. We want feedback and what people love or concerned about, that's what we want to hear. But we are suggesting a change at the driveway for governors, right? And so if you know where the driveway is now, it's offset from the signal. It's a really tricky spot. So we're suggesting sliding it over so it becomes part of the signalized intersection. We do that all the time. Now, does it require some changes to the governor's site? Yes. Will the project, when it moves forward towards design, have to coordinate with governors and making sure that it all works and they can operate? Yes. But we think from an operation and safety perspective, and again, safety from not only automobiles, but also people walking. It gets difficult when you've got driveway movements in confusing, difficult locations. So we'd like to slide that over and make it a 4-way intersection. We think it'll be safer in that location. That's probably one of the bigger access management things that, we would like to, suggest, as part of the change.
continuing on northbound, so now we're at State Street. Again, Tom had mentioned, with the modeling, with this proposed typical section, left turns don't have to be prohibited, from state onto Maine, in either direction. So for people, heading northbound or southbound, no left turn prohibitions at state, under the current modeling. And this takes us to the intersection of Main Street with Park and Allen. So this would be the northern limits of what we're calling the downtown section. We transitioned from the recommended 3-lane typical section to essentially what are the existing conditions at the intersection of Park and Allen and Maine. Couple of key things to point out here, just a little preview for about 10 minutes from now. You'll see there's some purple on Riverside Drive, there's some purple on Lake Street. Point that out, we'll talk more about that. The other thing to point out here is, again, this is the end of what we're gonna call the downtown section. So our recommendations on Main Street itself from the Park Allen intersection north are general. These are what they are. So there's kind of 3 things that need to be looked at on what we're calling Main Street north. So that's Blake to Maysville. So basically Blake Street, Park Allen, Blake, to the bridge, the mall, which would be the northern limits of the study area. Got to look at bike ped connectivity. You need to look at ADA upgrades and, again, access management improvements. The bike ped connectivity, you'll see more on that when we talk about improvements to the existing bike path system specifically. But there's a lack of connectivity to the northern part of town from a bike ped perspective right now. Thinking about the area immediately north of Park and Allen, Veterans Park area, the crosswalk at Walmart. From an access perspective, from an EDA perspective, there needs to be improvement there. Tom talked about access management improvements. I mean, access management improvement is something that we're looking at throughout the study area. So let's talk about Riverside Drive North. Riverside Drive is, and I've never talked about this before we worked on this, but Riverside Drive's got 2 halves, north and south. So the north half is state to Maine. And I think everybody's familiar with this area, the sort of free truck parking area that exists here. So between State and Main Street, this is more or less the picture of the existing condition, and this is a rendering of the existing condition. So it's 2-way traffic, pretty wide lanes overall, not even including the truck parking, but whether we include the truck parking or not, the existing pavement width here is substantial. It has a pretty wide feel to it. So again, the question becomes, how do we repurpose that existing width? So this is a proposed section, Riverside Drive North. Mitch can explain the multi-use piece part of this, but the key thing from a traffic design standpoint, and you'll notice it, is what we're recommending here is that this part of Riverside Drive become 1-way south. So width gets repurposed. One of the lanes that exist now becomes a 1-way southbound lane. The rest of the width on sort of the outboard side, if you will, the river side, the stream side, I should say, becomes a multi-use greenway space, kind of similar to what we recommended out here. Only at this point, at this location, really what it becomes is sort of an extension of the existing Riverside Park on the other side of State Street. Mitch, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we were really impressed with the pathway system through there, all the improvements down at Riverside, the Riverside Park, and the opportunity to extend that north while still maintaining the traffic movement. It seemed like a great opportunity, especially with the need for the greater connectivity through the community. This seems like an excellent way to reduce pavement areas, bring it back some more green space, make it more walkable, and make this feel a bit like, right now it feels a bit like sort of like a bypass in the downtown, and how can that be better integrated into the overall downtown? So it feels more like a street in the downtown and has more multi-purpose uses, and basically, again, is trying to reconnect the eastern side of the community down to the waterfront in as many ways as possible, while still maintaining the functionality through the downtown for all users.
So just to help with visualization of this, again, this is a picture of the existing condition. I've turned direction now, so now I'm facing kind of southbound facing State Street. And this is a rendering of the proposed typical, so it's one-way south. Again, you've got that Esplanade, multi-use path, and really what we would consider to be, you know, an extension of the rest of Riverside Park on the other side of State Street. So to look at that in plan view, and Mitch can talk about some of the features of this. This is a, you know, a plan view rendering, and you know, shows the one-way southbound and some of the features that we sort of envisioned for this area. If you want to talk about that, Mitch.
Yeah, just at a concept level, you could have, you know, over where the trucks park now, that could be for pop-up shops or food trucks or overflow parking. You could have along the river some outlooks or river overlooks, seating. I think because there's the dam is in that area, it sort of separates the river there. So if you could get down there with a drag ramp for kayaks or canoes, it'd be a potential spot to access the waterfront. And you can see we're basically working with the existing pavement. So this is sort of a low hanging fruit type of project where you can just sort of go and restripe or saw cut, and you can see changes pretty quickly here. It's not, you know, I don't think it's the most expensive of propositions, and you'd have pretty, I think, pretty quick realized change in this area. So it's an exciting little piece there, and I think you could transform something that's there right now into something that really sort of works with the asset you have to the south of this area.
So, just to recap, Riverside North, you know, pros and cons. Repurposing of the space gain for bike ped connectivity, you know, the narrower template, obviously narrow template and one-way traffic, it's a traffic calming. What some of the feedback we got from the first public meeting is that it's treated like a bypass, but as you'll note towards the bottom of the slide, people that are using Riverside Drive now to get north of town can make a left onto Maine at State Street now.
But you can't do that.
Which you can't do now.
Yeah.
So, and again, extension of the Riverside Park area, better bike ped connectivity, and as I alluded to before, I was pointing out the purple on Blake Street. This is part of a key connection to the existing bike path system that we'll talk about. So what we've done now is we've come off, and we'll talk about Riverside South in just a second. But what you'll see is the overall theme is Riverside Drive now is going to be, you know, connected to the existing bike path system in general. So this Riverside North piece of this multi-use path is a key segment of that. Again, this is what it looks like in plain view. We've seen this before when talking about Main Street. The same slide, just pointing your attention to Riverside Drive North itself. You know, there's the path, there's the green space, and we looked at this in the rendering views. This is where it ties in to Main Street. Again, noticing trail hinted at there on Blake Street. So now the question becomes, what do we do on Riverside Drive South? So those of you that have lived in Presque Isle for more than 10 minutes know that that is not Riverside Drive South. This is a picture of a concept for Riverside Drive South, which is a separated bike lane. And so, look at a picture that's probably a little more familiar. This actually is Riverside Drive South. And the key takeaway, much like a lot of the areas we looked at here, a lot of pavement width. It's very wide here, curb to curb. Round numbers, where I took that picture, it's probably 34, 35 feet curb to curb there, for an area that really only demands 2 11-foot lanes. So again, repurposing of that width, what do we do? This is a rendering that Jared put together for us. Jared wasn't able to be with us tonight due to some...
From DOT.
Yeah, Jared Farngallette from Maine DOT wasn't able to join us, but he sent me this today. He had quite a bit of fun with me when he sent me this picture, but this is an overlay of an idea for a demonstration project of a separated bike lane on Riverside Drive.
And so DOT is doing a number of these demonstration projects throughout the state. Really low-cost, simple tests. Right? You know, they basically will temporary stripe it. They'll put in those plastic bollards and basically epoxy it to the road and give it and see how it works. And so the suggestion is this would be a good location to try and see if this has some sort of long-term benefit. And, but it can, it's actually been very successful throughout the state in terms of testing different sort of treatments on roadways and making a decision on whether you should continue to do it in a more permanent fashion. So that's the thought with this concept.
Just a couple more things to point out about the concept. This is a very conceptual picture, obviously. We have been considering the idea of actually maybe locating a separated lane on the other side of the street. So there's the main reason for that being that this is the terminus of the vicinity of the sort of the end of the what I would call the park loop part of the bike path. So which is currently, and I am emphasizing this pretty heavily, it's the only part of it that's a loop right now. So when you come down, you can make the loop here, but and it exists on the riverside now, the actual stream side of the road. So then the question becomes, could something of this concept be used to make that connectivity to the multi-use path that we're recommending on Riverside North?
But you could do the demonstration project on the other side of the street, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you could shift anyway.
Yeah.
Or you could split the difference. This is, what's depicted here is actually a two-way path, right? You can split the difference into do two one-way paths or shift it. I mean, there are different options you can try.
Okay, so now moving to the west, and this is sort of the tail end of our recommendations, specific to the study area. So now we're coming off Main Street, we're coming off Riverside Drive, now we're moving out to the western limits of the study area. So State Street Bridge, this is what it looks like today, that's what it looked like in about.
And this is one of the key areas to cross over from those neighborhoods. And there's just a 5-foot sidewalk. We were out there today, we saw kids trying to bike through there, and it just seemed like a really good opportunity to make a safer connection from downtown to those western neighborhoods.
Right, exactly. That makes a good point. So with respect to sort of the east and west sides of town, there's this bridge, there's the Park Allen Street Bridge, and then there's the bridge on I guess the other end of what we call Main Street. I think it's actually called the Connection Road.
Yeah.
So a lot of width here too. If we look at the existing conditions here, there's a recurring theme there, but there's a lot of width here. We're 48 to 50 feet curb to curb right now. And again, what can be done for a repurposing of that width? So two concepts. The first concept is repurposing the sort of the outbound or outboard lanes. So the extreme outer west and eastbound lanes now become protected bike lane, protected walkway. So in plan view, right now it's 2 lanes in and out, if you will. It becomes 1 lane in and out for vehicles.
And just to clarify, we're physically not changing the bridge. I mean, that's not the plan. So when we say protected, most likely it would be those bollards that would get basically stuck on the pavement to help separate moving traffic from what's happening, either biking or people walking. That's sort of the thought.
So this is concept 1. There's a second concept for State Street Bridge, which is utilizing the existing what would be the 2 lanes on the northern half of the bridge for vehicular traffic, and then all the space on the south half of the bridge, which is the sort of the Riverside Park side of the bridge, becomes this protected bike ped facility, green space. Mitch, you want to talk about the idea of this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was really, we're thinking of, we can't change the bridge, right? We can't cut holes in the bridge and structurally change it. So we thought, is there a way maybe, and this is very conceptual at this point, is there a way to bring planters there, basically introduce some sort of landscape, introducing some edge treatments that create a sense of like a park crossing the bridge, some sense of greenery there. Maybe it's not trees, maybe it's grasses or shrubs. But is there any way to sort of make it feel a little bit more tame and a little bit more comfortable for people to walk, move the traffic to the north side, and then sort of allocate that for cars and trucks, and then allocate the south side for people walking back and forth, and really try to create a strong connection from the western neighborhoods to the downtown. Really make it inviting for people to come through there, feel comfortable walking through there, have a sense of division between them and the moving cars. Is there a way to do that? We're not, it's a complicated technical decision, but we want to send the idea out there and see how people feel about it.
Chris, real basic question, something's troubling me with all these measurements. How wide is a log truck trailer? So we got a truck carrying logs, trailing lumber. What's the state maximum width? DOT guys would know.
9 feet?
8.6, I think.
How many?
An 8.6.
8.6 or 9? 8.6?
Okay. So
Yeah.
the 12-foot trailers are in the woods, they're not on the road.
What?
The 12-foot trailers are the ones that are in the woods, and not on our paved roads.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much right now, Maine DOT is designing roadways pretty consistently with 11-foot travel lanes. That's pretty much the standard throughout the state that they're designing.
And so true trailer trucks on Main Street, 12 feet's enough for each of them to pass each other with mirrors.
Yeah, going slowly,
Too much.
going slowly, right? I mean, that's the intent. Make sure
11.
Yeah, make it, yeah.
11.
Yeah, 11 feet's proposed, so, yeah, that's the plan, yeah.
What about the turn on State Street onto Main Street?
Great question. So one of the things that we think we're gonna need to do is do an offset stop bar. So that left turn lane going onto State would be offset from the intersection so that a truck could swing and get around the corner without that vehicle being there to block them. So we think there are ways to kind of design that so truck movements can occur, appropriately.
And the same for going up State Street to turn right onto Main Street?
Want to go and say that?
Yeah, that's similar to what it is now.
Yeah, that's it, same.
Because they're sitting in the center lane, the left lane of the two-lane street to turn
Right, which is why we have to pull that stop bar back. That left turn lane in essence is almost in the same location as the lane you're talking about. So we gotta pull that stop bar back towards Academy so that they can make that swing. We call it an offset stop bar. We use those in many cases for that reason, so that they can make those swinging movements.
Do you want questions now or later?
Later.
Okay.
Yeah, we're almost done, so
Okay.
later.
Just pro cons of recommendations on the bridge, repurposing of the space. We recognize that, winter maintenance of the bridge, if we introduce any sort of element that's discussed here, something that needs to be considered. From a bike ped perspective, it does create a pretty unique experience, something that would be really unique to the area and kind of tie into the existing facilities that we have available at Riverside Park. This is just a quick plan view. We talked about the demonstration project on Riverside South that allows an opportunity for a continuation of the multi-use path over the bridge on what would be the south side of the bridge. Again, increasing that connection, from a bike ped perspective to the western neighborhoods. So lastly, I didn't save it for last on purpose, it's just where it landed, but Five Fingers intersection. So a lot of discussion about this at the first public meeting. This is what it looked like today. So I realize this is small, a lot of information here. I'll just touch on this quickly here. This is what's there today, and so the question became, what do we do? So what do we look at? 3 options. ADA bike ped upgrade only. So you could call that the do nothing option. Really, that would just be the do nothing option from the perspective of reconfiguring the intersection for traffic movements. But there's certainly an opportunity to increase ADA compliance and increase bike ped connectivity, crosswalks, that kind of thing at that location.
And upgrade the signal system. I mean, it's a relatively old system, so upgrade the system so that it's functioning, with the best technology, so that it's as efficient as possible. That would be that first concept.
So second concept, and I realize with the light, and I know it's small font, the second concept is make it a 4-way intersection. So it's 5 now, and so 4 means, closing one leg. What we looked at was a reconfiguration of Dyer Street, and we'll show a picture of it. But the concept 2 is a reconfiguration which, rather than have Dyer Street come into the Five Fingers, Dyer Street tees off into Parsons Street to the north. And that is the concept that at present we're recommending in the plans that you'll see. And concept 3 is a roundabout, so it's a 5-way intersection. Roundabout from a strictly technical perspective, when you have that many legs, is that something that you look at? Yes. From a cost-benefit perspective, may not be the best option, and we also recognize that there's some, I'll say, apprehension from the perspective of familiarity. Is it right for the area? And we understood that. That was heard first public meeting. So what we're recommending is option 2, which is the making a 4-way intersection. So you can see, and I realize the pointer's small here, but this is Dyer Street. Dyer Street comes in now. So now Dyer Street tees into Parsons Street. That utilizes some existing parkland. It simplifies the signalization of the intersection. So although somewhat skewed, this becomes a 4-way intersection. The other thing that it does is it simplifies pedestrian connectivity to the west by way of all these other recommendations that we've been making with respect to the path and getting out to the western neighborhoods. And what you see here is, again, another key piece of proposed bike bed improvement that moves to the west on Parsons Street that the implementation of is greatly simplified by the reconfiguration of this intersection. So this brings us to the last piece. What do we do with the bike path? I guess I was going to write that on the slide, and then I thought, no, let's make it sound better than that. So multi-use path segments. From the first meeting from the safety audit, we identified 4 major goals, which are make it a loop. Can we connect Umpy to the downtown? Can we connect? Can we connect the existing system to what we'll call Main Street North, the retail area? And can we connect the western neighborhoods? All of those things are things that we're looking to do. So we're proposing 4 segments. They're listed here, but we'll just get to the picture. I'll talk through them. So yellow is the existing bike path. So Carmichael Street, come down, we're here. Here's the southern end of the study area. Chatham Street, here's what we call the bike path loop. So this first piece, this is the Main Street Greenway. So this green line corresponds with what we showed in purple in plan view. So this is that repurposing of the existing width of the street to introduce a pathway on the western side. Here's Chatham Street, ties into the existing loop. Then we have Riverside South. That's the demonstration project with the separated bike lane. Then we have Riverside North. That's the truck parking area repurposed. This has now become 1-way south. Get space here for the path. We cross here at Blake Street, and then this is Blake Street. This is the key piece because Blake Street's got a fair amount of available width. It has a sidewalk on the north side that does not have telephone poles in the middle of it. And the high school is right here, and for people that use it, myself included, the parking lot that's across the street from the high school is kind of the bike path park and ride. So most people, myself included again, if I'm going to go to a park and ride, I'm going to get on, I want a loop, I don't want to have to go somewhere and turn around. So this accomplishes, these 2 pieces accomplish a couple of things. Increases connectivity of the campus to downtown, ties together existing portions of Riverside Park to the Riverside North piece, and it creates a loop. Then the other 2 segments that we're talking about, this will be that western piece. So again, here's our State Street Bridge. Here's path improvements we talked about on the bridge. This is Parsons Street. Again, Parsons Street, I don't have a picture of this in these slides, but Parsons Street, much like a lot of the other areas we looked at, huge available width. It's only a 2-lane road, but it's 40-something feet curb to curb. A lot of available width there. 8-foot shoulders on both sides. A lot of width there. So this does a couple of things. Connects to Micmac community up here. There's an existing park here. And another thing, which is something that was mentioned at the first public meeting, is could there be a new pedestrian bridge that would connect the western neighborhoods to the retail area? So this segment, this is Harris Street, and this is a water treatment plant. This is the existing Veterans Park. The location of this proposed new ped crossing, there's a couple of advantages to that. The first of which, the town already owns the land here. This is a water treatment plant, and it just so happens that neither side of the river here is a mapped wetland. So the other thing it does is, by way of Harris Street and Davis Street, it's a straight shot to connect to Carmichael Street, which again creates another loop of the existing path. And then the fourth segment is the sort of retail north segment. So this speaks to those general recommendations on Main Street North, bike ped connectivity, ADA compliance. Can people get from western neighborhoods to shopping? Can they get to Walmart? Can they walk or bike to Walmart? So this kind of comes in behind and connects to the connector road. And then also, this is something that came up at the first public meeting. This proposed piece actually utilizes a piece of the ATV trail behind the mall, and again, comes back in and creates yet another loop. So if you look at the yellow that's there now, we got one tiny little loop, and really the existing system, with the exception of the Carmichael Street piece, you know, it's really southern part of town and really no connection whatsoever to the western part of town. So based on the goals we identified from the safety audit in the first public meeting, link Umpy, make a loop, western neighborhoods, get people shopping to the north. So that's the idea. And that is the end of our recommendations. Just to touch on this quickly, and then we'll just open it up. We're right here tonight, October 11th. You can see from the picture we're more or less to the end of the schedule here. So we want to hear feedback tonight. We'll open it up, and then myself, Tom, and Mitch, Jared will work with Gail and Martin to put together our report and really take the feedback that we get tonight, sort of bake the recommendations into our final report, and plan to transmit that right by the end of the year. So, so with that, this is Galen's contact info, and just open it up.
Just going back, the Blake Street North section, was the recommendation just to leave it as is?
I think there's enough available width there that there could be.
Not on the bike path, but on the way back, I guess, when you were talking about Blake Street North on one.
Route 1 north, yeah.
Route 1 North.
Oh, I understand.
Was
Yes.
there a recommendation on that? I missed that.
The recommendation with respect to what Main Street is in the, what we're calling the Main Street North section, it's not a change of the typical section. So
Not a change.
the
leave
four
it as is.
the 4 lanes that exist there now, that would stay. So the easiest way to think about that is when you come north and you get to kind of like where Riverside Drive is, where Klukie's is, that 3-lane section, that transitions to what's existing now. And then from there north, you know, McDonald's, Walmart, what we call the core of the road, curb to curb, doesn't change there. It's just that within that, can we make bike ped improvements? Can we make ADA compliant?
Make it ADA compliant, add crosswalks so you can get across the streets and provide better connectivity from one side of the street to the other side of the street.
You could have some ped refuges potentially in there, potentially.
Potentially, but there are enough signals where you can cross pedestrians at the signals, which is a place where we would like to cross pedestrians if at all possible.
Can I ask some more real basic questions and I'll let everybody else talk?
Sure.
Have you ever worked at, what's the busiest road we have here in Presque Isle? Busiest road is probably Route 1, right? North, south? That's all we have.
Yeah, true one, yeah.
There's no other way to get south, is there?
Correct, yeah.
What's the second busiest road we have coming into Presque Isle?
Second biggest coming in the Presque Isle.
Traffic flow.
I mean, from a traffic flow perspective?
Yes.
Give me a minute, I can tell you.
It's the Mapleton Road. Correct, Dana?
Wrong. It could be Academy. Have to look at traffic.
I believe it's the Mapleton Road.
Yeah, it could be Academy, right? Like going east and Mapleton going west, yeah.
Well, but we're coming in
In the morning.
to Presque Isle, right? That's more of a transitional road, Academy up and down, come with traffic flowing through the city of Presque Isle. We have Route 1 that has to flow through the city of Presque Isle. Most of the traffic coming to Presque Isle comes from Mapleton is second. West traffic coming east to Presque Isle. Inbound traffic to the city.
Yeah, he's,
So, just, I'll have to research that. Has anybody ever had to go down through Main Street when they're unloading stuff at the pizza shop down there in the corner by Wilder's, Domino's?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the morning at 7:45.
Now, I own a car dealership here in town, and they have to unload trucks and cars off the car carrier. UPS delivers freight a lot on Main Street, FedEx, etc. Where will they park on Main Street to unload their products and services? Like the Elks Club now, anybody driven by the Elks Club before when they're unloading liquor?
Yep.
What happens to that lane? It's tied up for quite a period of time. So, but we're looking at one lane each way and a turning lane in the middle, right?
That's the plan.
So how will we,
Parking lane too, there's a parking lane too.
Parking lane, so in the downtown core, you would use that parking lane.
If it's
Particularly be signed for loading certain times of the day, that's what communities, would do. They would, sign that for.
those have to be available lanes to park in? Assuming nobody else is
In
parked
that
there.
stretch, there's parking, the stretch from Chapman to State, so, or even
Right.
past State, moving up further north. So those there'd be loading zones that would be established as part of, what goes on there.
Yeah, but you
which
take,
is- Which is typical for urban areas, that's not
That's
unusual.
all I have really for comments.
you take Wednesday morning when they're unloading,
Yep.
there's cars parked there, so they block off one road now
One of the lanes, sure.
to unload.
Yep.
So if you got cars parked in the parking area, how's that truck gonna get in there?
Well, it requires enforcement and making sure that, again, time of day, typically there would be an establishment of a time of day parking restriction for loadings, and it would be coordinating
You know,
with
only
businesses.
road in and out of Northern Maine, Route 1. I do have one more comment, I'll try to shut up.
Okay.
no, these are good comments.
And we want comments.
good- these are not-
That's
that's why
why
we're
the
here.
city does not have another north-south street that went all the way through town. We have another alternative to go parallel to Main Street, to travel halfway through town. Really. There's nothing to the west, there are no roads to the west. Other than a little connector you showed off the bridge,
Yeah,
to the Trail Parks
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah.
We have another street that goes on the west side of Main Street. Okay, we can go down across the bridge, you go way up around, you come up by the mall. So think about North Conway for a minute, just about the north-south street in the last 15 or 20 years there. Why did they get traffic off Main Street? So they could have commerce downtown. So now on the east side of Main Street, we have no other north-south street either. There is none, none exists. Main Street is our only way in and out of the city. And if you want to take side streets to get around, good luck, and try to be in a truck. And if you look at our commercial traffic, as percentage of residential traffic, I worked on Main Street all my life, and I have a big window in front of the building, and I see it go by every day. We have a tremendous amount of commercial traffic here, as a percentage of our total traffic. And so, that is unique to this town also. No east, no west streets, north and south, and a tremendous amount of commercial traffic through the corridor.
So
Don't park the UPS truck, we can't get through. You're delivering UPS, you park in front of the business, there's only one lane on Main Street. This stops everybody.
So what's your preference? I mean,
You gotta have 2 lanes, man.
4 lanes, 4 lanes.
Four lanes
That's
are
what he
across.
said.
In a 25-mile-an-hour zone? How
Pardon?
many cities you been to with 4 lanes in a 25-mile-an-hour zone? It's not a lot.
Again, I could just, I think your comments about deliveries, all those are good comments, and.
If you go downtown Boston, Portland, those places, you see what a problem it is with the UPS, and they pay their tickets, right?
They do pay their tickets.
This is our
They do pay their tickets.
north-south route.
Yes.
It's just our lifetime.
Yeah.
The only way we get in out of the city.
Yeah, and I would, again, it's a busy street, there's, 17,000 cars a day there. But again, when we looked at it, 4 lanes you don't get 4 even lanes of capacity, just because there are turn movements and other movements that happen. So you don't get full, so actually going to 3 with a designated turn lane isn't much less capacity than a 4-lane section. That's been,
Until somebody stops.
excuse me?
Until somebody else stops.
Well, there's still parking spots.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, no, I get, so the delivery thing needs to be figured out, maybe we need to figure out how to make sure that there's places for deliveries on the, but again, typically that's done on curbside, it's called curbside parking management, figuring out how to manage what's happening on certain stretches, and those need to be thought about, I don't think there's any question about that. Yeah. Someone else had their hand up, yes, sir.
Yeah, maybe I skipped the timeline or wasn't paying attention. Is the phase 2 bypass going in ahead of this?
Phase 2 with bypass is funded for construction in 24, 25.
24, 25.
What was that?
It's funded for construction in 24 and 25.
So which is first?
That's funded for construction in the work plan.
Yeah, that probably happened
In
first.
terms of what gets constructed
I
first.
think that's gonna alleviate a lot of what Kurt's talking about here. And that's the whole purpose of doing that one first, ahead of trying to fix downtown.
At the bypass.
Yeah, that's correct.
So if a farmer's coming through town from Ashland or Logger, let's take a farmer, for example, Grasswood's been lugging those big long trailers all day long, right? They're gonna have to go where to get to Mars Hill?
It won't eliminate all, Kurt. I mean, it's no perfect
It's north-south
solution.
traffic is what they talk about.
But it's gonna get rid of a lot of the traffic that now goes from south to the valley, or to Caribou. It's like they're just gonna go around Presque Isle
A lot of them
if
are
they don't have
going,
business in town.
a lot of them are shooting out toward Fort now with the new bypass. I think from the Ashland side, because I come from the State Road side, and there's, a lot of them don't come downtown anymore.
Other questions about the plan? Must be other things, people, I mean, things you like, things I mean, we'd love to hear both sides, concerns, issues.
I wanted to know if you guys knew from the bike path that's up there now, if all that, the green got incorporated into it, do you know how many miles that would be of a bike path around
Have
town?
you figured out mileage? I mean, I have no idea. We haven't-
No, but I could find out pretty quickly.
Yeah, we can figure it out.
It'd be nice. What's the mileage of that green?
I like the bike path stuff. I think that I like the idea of the crossing on Harris Street. I think that's a huge improvement. And the connection of the both sides of the town, I really like that.
Yeah, we say it in the pro cons, right? I mean, we like that too. Some of the stuff's not cheap. I mean, we're honest. I mean, we gotta build a bridge, right? And so some of these recommendations are gonna be costly. Mitch talked about some things that are just retrofitting things. There may be like the implementation of some of these improvements could happen over time. And there could be short-term improvements that can happen, relatively quickly. And then some of the other things are probably gonna wait funding opportunities. I mean, those are big dollar items. There are federal dollars out there that we're seeing in Maine. Communities are lucky in being able to tap into some of that money to do some of these things. But some of this stuff may take some time given some of those higher costs.
The other thing, I do feel some of the questions, I think that Kurt's feeling just about getting through town, because I work on this end, but a lot of the things, like if you want to go at lunch to the other end to do things, I mean, right now, it takes a while to get through town even with the 4 lanes. So I feel some of that, and at the same time, I think to myself, what kind of downtown do we want to have? And so that bends me back toward, yeah, it would be nice to be able to walk across the street. It would be nice to not have traffic zooming by you at like 40 miles an hour in certain sections of Main Street. So I do feel that the pain though, Kurt, that you're feeling, or the questions, I guess, that you're.
Somewhat emotional, so.
Yeah,
I feel it.
No, I should,
Keep these facts, not emotions.
your questions are good questions. I mean, I should have thought about like preparing a list of some examples of where communities have gone from 4 to 3. I mean, it's happened actually quite a bit in the state. I mean, I'll just keep it to Maine. Nationally, it's happening quite a bit too. But there are a lot of places that are doing it. From a
But they don't
safety
they have more than one road in and out of the city.
No, I understand that, but just from a standpoint of volume, again, we typically look at, volume, capacity, do things work from a mobility perspective, and so it can work from that perspective. But I understand like regionally and how, from a system perspective, but, it is, I'm just telling you that it does work. There are places where it doesn't work. I've worked on studies where, nope, the volume's too high. It's just not gonna work, and we don't make the recommendation. This isn't like a blanket thing we do, go to 4, go to 3, go to 4. we look at the data, try to, model it and come to some conclusion whether it's feasible or not. And so, the data shows that it can work. I do think the bypass helps too, right? At some point, that's gonna help sort of pull some traffic out too. And so, the thing is, we've done tests before with the 4 to 3, right? We talked about we had the different concepts, right? And so, it's paint. So I've worked on projects where when the paving project's happening, they put down the binder course and they test the striping before they put on the final layer, see how it goes, and then ultimately decide it's not working, so put it back the way it was, or it's actually working pretty well, and maybe it can be something permanent. So there are options also to test it. It's a little bit more intense than the Riverside South demonstration project, but I have done that on projects in the state where I've actually tested it to see if it works.
One thing, and it kind of brought up a good point, but in the pictures you had of the central core with the trees in the middle, as opposed to not having trees in the middle, but with the 3 lanes.
Yes.
Well, so I guess in the thought of a couple of gentlemen I know that work for UPS, they said, oh, well, if we had 3 lanes and we did have a turning lane in the middle and the space was available, and you could, park the UPS truck in the middle of the street and run to both sides and deliver the packages.
Some downtowns do that.
They
That's
do
exactly
that.
what
they said that would be great,
That's exactly what they did, yeah.
that would work for them, because it wouldn't tie up the traffic on the side and the cars would still come,
No, we finally do that.
But the other part of that is, we also have big time snow and snow removal issues, and then the extra things in the middle of the street are gonna be a challenge. And in the case of multiple times a day we have right now, because we have a regional ambulance service that runs the communities both south and north and west and all over the area, that those emergency vehicles very often split the street to go around cars. And if that middle section of the street is open, there's no issue at that point to get that emergency vehicle ambulance around where there's congestion, if there was a central defined tree or cement thing in the middle of the street. So I guess those are some things I would kind of bring up, because that kind of cement with the trees in the middle, to me, might be just a little too much of a hemmed-in part in that central corridor, because of emergency vehicles, because of the delivery vehicles, and because of the things that Kurt's mentioned, that those things might be tough in front of the Braden Theater area.
Yeah, sure, of course,
In
yeah.
fact, Mitchell and I worked on a project in Falmouth on Route 1, where we worked with the local fire department, and we actually simulated with cones locations of the islands, so that they can maneuver appropriately and actually inform the design of how those islands.
And we took the islands out.
And actually, some came out, to be honest, some got smaller, but it was, there are things that you can kind of test with local fire departments and emergency response,
And we did that Route 1 in Rockland. We've done Route 1, many Route 1s all through the state, and we always test it out with the fire trucks, with the trucks. All this is, you don't have to spend big money. You just need a cone and a fire truck. You go out there and do it, and you can just. It's not money. It's just it's a little bit of time.
The one last thing, the thing that when we did this bypass to the east years ago, and we discussed then, and there's just never been discussed since again, because it was just said, no, shut up. We're not talking about that. Forget it. It's not happening. Our industrial parks on the west side of town. And all the trucks, we now have a major trucking depot there. They just bought 200 new trailers. They've got 200 there already, so there's 400 trucks that come and go from there. It's also the regional rail depot for gas, natural gas, propane, and fuel. And they're all coming through town and turning left to go in there if they're doing their deliveries. So again, we don't have an adequate way to get from the Mapleton Road or that side of town to US 1 South without coming to State Street downtown. And we do have a rail bed, if you will, from outside of town, straight here past the Chrysler dealer.
Yeah.
And that rail bed goes directly over to the Mapleton Road. And in that corridor next to it, that would be a hell of a place for you guys to design a road that would connect the Mapleton Road to US 1 to get those trucks, instead of coming through downtown, to
Well,
connect that.
following the rail line alignment.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Because the issue is, we have that wonderful bypass to the north, and you can go out around the town, but it stops. And up near the industrial park, that could continue across to the Mapleton Road by the airport and then go south on that rail line. And that probably, from a truck perspective, would be more important than even the one that you're talking about, because very often the trucks that are going north to Fort Fairfield go up 1A, they never come to Presque Isle. The only trucks that are really coming up to Presque Isle are the ones going to Presque Isle, and possibly Caribou, you know, and they can use the new bypass, the Caribou ones for sure. But the south and north ones going to especially the farm trucks and the log trucks that are going on the west side of town, we don't have anything adequate for that, and they still are gonna end up downtown on Main Street. And, you know, my druthers would be, if there's some way in the future we could address that or look at that, that would be a big win for us because of our industrial park, and it would make the industrial park more successful because it'd be more accessible.
Makes sense, makes sense.
So anyway, my two cents.
What about Maysville? You say they have to come to State Street in the middle of town. Why can't they go Maysville out and around either north or south from there?
Well, it's just that all of the traffic from Mapleton and all of that, they aren't doing that. Right now, they're driving down through Main Street, and they're driving right by my office on Academy Street. They see hundreds of trucks a day, you know? I mean, they drive by, it's, you know, 10,000 cars go by my office on Academy Street every day.
If you slow people down, they'll find other avenues they can go faster. It's been my experience. I mean, someone hit a moose on Main Street with 85 with 25 mile an hour zone. How do you hit a moose? Because you're not going 25 miles an hour. You know, I get that it's our only, you know, north-south. I get that. But that's someone that's rushing. There's so many people. I have right on Main Street. I have a store there. There's people flying down that street. 25 mile an hour, that's nothing. You know, I love everything you guys did. All the bold ones where it's just, yep, slow them down. You know, get them tight and like, oh, I'll slow down. I'm okay with going a little slower on Main Street and having a more beautiful town. You know.
But anyway, but just, you know, something to think about.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
What else? What do people think of the five-legged intersection? Thoughts about that? Our thought of, again, it's just a thought, our thought of closing Dyer and teeing it in. People think that makes sense, or?
Absolutely.
Helps make it less complicated, right? I mean, you go through and it's a little confusing where you're supposed to go and how you maneuver through the intersection. And we think it'll make it safer and clearer for pedestrians and bicyclists that want to get through there.
I have a question about, and this doesn't, I don't know where this fits into your plan, but the lights on Main Street kind of relates to the Five Fingers at State Street too. The light patterns of how often those are evaluated to determine the flow of traffic through Main Street. There's nothing more frustrating to me that you get to Academy, you stop, you take your foot off the gas, and then you gotta go, and then at Chapman Street, you're slow. It's like, do they coordinate these things?
I doubt it. I'm trying to.
They should.
So I don't know who maintains the signals in town. So my guess is probably the city does. I'm looking for. Do you know or?
Joey, we were better at getting through Main
So anyway,
Street 30 years ago.
in most cases, it's like I hear it all the time, right? The signals aren't timed right. I'm waiting when I shouldn't have to wait, and so it's part of the equipment, right? The equipment's probably old at those locations, so most likely, you know, having those signals upgraded. I mean, we didn't mention it, but most likely those signals will be upgraded as part of a big project. You know, and so, in many cases, the detection's not working, right? Typically, you have detection so they know a car or truck's there, and it figures out how long to keep it green, and coordinating. So if you go through Chapman, you get through Academy, and you get through State, but many communities have signals that just are inefficient. I mean, Presque Isle's not unique with that. It's just something that just doesn't get a lot of attention, quite frankly, in communities. And
Can we
so,
put it in our plans?
I mean, there are a handful of communities in the state that have staff, like local city, town staff that work on signals, Portland, Lewiston, Bangor, and those signals tend to be operating pretty well because they're able to, have staff go out and tweak the timing and make changes. So it's just one of those things.
But would these proposed changes better sync these signals or coordinate them, or?
I mean, from a distance perspective, you would probably coordinate them, right? I mean, typically, if they're within a quarter mile of each other, you think about coordinating them in a system, so you probably do that in this case, so that you wouldn't stop. And also you can coordinate them so that you're traveling at a certain speed too, right? I mean, if you've ever been in New York City and you get green going down one of the main streets, if you drive too fast, you're gonna actually hit a red eventually. So you can time them so that you can get through if you go a certain speed limit, keep you from going too fast. Yes, ma'am.
So with the compression to 2 lanes, travel lanes down through Main Street, and taking down what we have as 4, how is the capacity, even if you sync up those lights, how will that capacity look in moving all those cars into 1 lane each way, and how long it will take you to get from one end of town to the other?
Good question. I'll get you an answer on that. I mean, we've modeled it, so I know the delay that would occur, at the intersections, and I can go to my model and determine how long it takes to go from point A through the signal to point B, and I can give you a before and after conclusion. And so we'll get that information out. We'll post some information. I can just tell you when we ran the numbers, there's something called level of service. Level of service, I don't know if you know what level of service is, but when we model conditions, we model, with quantitative data, volume data, percent heavy vehicles, grades, signal, how's the signal operating? Are there pedestrians at the intersection that can influence how vehicles get through? We plug this into a model, it spits out a delay, how long you wait on average, seconds per vehicle. And then there's something called qualitative level of service that we use in the industry to basically tell you how it's performing. And it's like a school grade card. So it's a really good intersection with very little delay, very little congestion, and F obviously means that it's failing and people are waiting really long. Maine DOT has a standard where they consider the intersections to be acceptable if it's D or better. So if you got an intersection D or better, it's okay, whatever. But anyway, so these intersections, and again, I can't remember exactly, but they're in the C range in terms of level of service. They're in the C range, which is, considered to be acceptable. That's like a 25 seconds of delay that, on average going through an intersection.
So is that based on the 24-hour clock, or is that based
No,
on the
so
busy sections, busy times of day, rush
No,
hours?
very good question. So we typically look at peak hours. So we'll look at the morning commute time period, typically on a weekday, and we look at the evening commute time period. Typically it's, 7, 8 in the morning, and typically, somewhere around 4 to 5 in the afternoon. So we're looking at those peak time periods when traffic is at the greatest demand. Some cases we'll look at other times of the day. We're working on a study on Route 1 in Kittery right now, and actually the middle of the day is the highest volume time period because of all the outlet malls, if you've been there. So sometimes we'll look at weekends because for whatever reason there's certain influences about about a weekend demand. But in this case, you're pretty standard. I tell people in Maine, roughly peak hours occur 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and roughly 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. You're kind of in that same range, a little bit before that, but not the same.
I have a question on what the traffic impact might be on 2nd and 3rd Streets. If people start to think that traffic gets backed up on Main and they're coming in from East End or points east, and they decide, I'll just cut through 2nd and 3rd Streets, go down to Lake, for example.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if that's in the model anywhere, or it's basically.
Well, I mean, it's not in the model. I mean, I don't have, there are certain models that actually will look at something like that. You have a pretty dense network that you create, and it will divert traffic to different streets based upon, congestion and what happens. That's a
And
lot.
I mean, we tend to like the connectivity. We want people to have that choice.
Right.
People should feel they can move through downtown.
Yeah, I mean, with that said, you don't want undue impact to neighborhoods, right? I mean,
Right. Negatively
we don't want that,
negatively.
we don't want that to happen. I mean, again, the data is showing that there isn't going to be the congestion that, that would, I think, lead to that kind of cut-through traffic issue, in the neighborhood, and so I don't foresee that happening. Could there be some incident in town? I mean, it happens all the time, right? You can have something that happens that shuts down a road because something went on, and those things, you can't plan around those kinds of things. Those things happen.
I like all the extra green space and tying the university into our downtown. And I can just say from the Where's Waldo contest we had around town this summer, that cruising around town, the 4 lanes with my niece on my lap, trying to navigate like back and forth across Main Street to get to all the little stores, it was dangerous and not easy to do. So I think slowing people down and making it easier to get back and forth across would make my life easier. But I'm concerned, as Kurt brought up, congestion, snow removal, and then the ambulances go right down the middle of the road a lot. So, and that's in our core downtown. So from Carroll's to Lake Street, they're doing what they need to do to get around cars. So,
Because they don't come from Caribou typically, they come from Ashland, either east or west.
Yeah.
The ambulance services and fire trucks are in those directions.
well, I'm even thinking ours coming from the fire station.
Yeah.
So I think the trees in the middle may be problematic, for the ambulance anyways.
Yeah, makes sense.
I wouldn't know where to pull if there was one coming in this lane north and south. Where would you pull over to let the ambulance by? Would you turn right or would you pull left in the middle lane?
Yeah, they're gonna run that middle lane, Kurt.
Pardon?
They're gonna run the middle lane.
They're gonna run, so you're gonna.
They use the middle lane, correct?
Yeah,
So
that's
probably
what
try to stay where we
It's
are.
just supposed to stop.
Yeah, you use the middle lane.
Yeah, it'll be on that line.
And I have one more question. Have you ever done a count of the people that walk in Presque Isle?
How many people walk?
Yes.
We ever counted how many people walk? We have some counts, but they're older, that had the number of people that walked in some intersections.
I drive from my business 1.5 traffic lights to go to lunch.
Yeah, because you can't walk.
I could, absolutely, but I can almost see the business. You're gonna change my lifestyle, I don't like it.
Well, you don't want to walk. I'm sorry, you don't want to walk. I misunderstood you. You don't want to walk.
Right, so, well, we
You want to try.
tell people,
It's not joy. Joy is drive for safety.
We want to create a blue zone though.
Our
We
hope
want a
is-
blue zone.
with some of these plans, is that more people will walk instead of driving in their car to go.
How many months a year?
No, that's the hope. I mean, I can't say we're not gonna be able to like change everybody's behavior, but our hope is like, oh, I guess I'll just walk. That's a cool path. I feel safe. And then so there's some sense that maybe we can reduce the amount of vehicles that are on the road, and so that more people are walking. That's our hope. I know it's not gonna be a big number, I get that, but our hope is that we try to, we work on studies to provide better, connectivity, off the street, between developments, so that people aren't, circulating on the street system, that they can go between developments, interparcel connection, anything to help sort of relieve the pressure on the roadways. It's just gonna help, we think it's gonna make it safer and more lively. I mean, Mitch gets involved in sort of urban design. It's just, our hope is that it creates a really nice environment for people oh yeah, I think I will walk. It's not, we get it, it's 12 below zero, I'm not walking, we get that, but maybe it'll be a nice day and you'll walk,
Most people there can't have a car because there isn't public transportation.
Right.
There's only one cab service.
Right.
And so you don't see a lot of people walking because of those reasons.
Right.
You'll see everybody has to have a car.
Yeah.
I'll say this, I have a shop right downtown in the main area. I was amazed. I don't go outside when it's 20 below, but I see people walking all the time in January, February. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, but they
It's because they don't have a car.
Well, we do have to represent those people that aren't maybe here. There are people who can't afford a car.
Well, no,
And they deserve to get around.
No, at the first public meeting, there was a couple that don't have a car.
Yeah.
You know, and I was quite frankly surprised, like, wow. And so they talk about walking up to the retail area.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so there are some people that actually don't have cars. And so, yeah, I hope is that people will, I mean, listen, Mitch and I talked about this today. One of the great assets of this community is that path, right? When I came here a few months ago, I went for a run, I'm a runner, and it's a great asset to the community. And so, and how many people did I see on that path when I was running? A lot of people on that path use that path. And so, you know, we're of the mindset, if you build it, they will come. And so, you know, that whole loop system, you know, I just think it's gonna be a big asset to the community in terms of, you know, what you have here and expanding that. And so, and that, you know, I'm a biker and a runner, and so I travel with my wife to communities because they have cool things like that. And so I visit and spend money and have a great time in places that
We bought our bikes on this trip.
Yeah,
You guys aren't in the
stuff
black
like that.
Subaru, because they took that off about an hour ago. Are you guys driving a black Subaru with a bike rack in the back?
Yeah, that's his.
They put it off about an hour ago.
That's okay, their bikes are in my garage.
Hopefully his kids aren't taking him out for a ride. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. We appreciate, we do. And listen, if you get any other comments, you go home and something else pops up, send it to Galen. You know, send him a.
Will this presentation be on the website, Galen?
Yeah, there'll be a PDF.
We'll post
And
a
we'll
copy.
do follow-up questions.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So,